Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We'll give everyone around 2 minutes to join. So I'll stop the recording and restart exactly at 9:02 PST, 11:02 or 12:02 EST. All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the Joule and SAP Integrated Business Planning webinar. My name is Eric, and I'll be one of your hosts today. This webinar is co-hosted by my SAP Business AI Rig team and the SAP product teams. Before I introduce our speaker, I want to quickly go through some housekeeping rules. First and foremost, I want to inform everyone that this webinar is being recorded, and for privacy reasons, the audio and video functionality has been disabled for attendees. If you have questions during the webinar, please use the Q&A panel to enter your questions, and our panelists will answer as many as possible. There will also be a poll that will be prompted at the end of the session. Please respond as your participation is extremely valued. This is also a series of AI webinars, and we have many more sessions lined up. If you have not registered, I will send the sign up link for the upcoming session shortly. With that, I will now hand it over to my colleague, Laura Tozo, who will be your presenter for today. Laura, go ahead.
Thank you, Eric, and welcome everybody from my side as well. So here, as Eric mentioned, is the list of the webinars that are coming up or already happened, for which you can have a look at the recordings. So this is a series, and today, of course, we talk about SAP Integrated Business Planning specifically, but I wanted to also give a little bit of a recap of what's been said in past sessions as well, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So just to remind you, in case you haven't heard already, Joule is the SAP digital assistant, our co-pilot. And Joule is basically a new application, if you want to think about it, that sits on top of existing applications. Here you can see that we have, listed all the different areas that SAP covers with our applications, so Cloud ERP, supply chain management, human resources, etc., etc. All of these are handled by the LOBs. Integrated Business Planning is part of SAP Supply Chain Management area. And we have, of course, in the past already delivered plenty of embedded AI capabilities. But now we are talking about Joule, which is the digital assistant on top of the solutions. And of course, one of the main things about Joule is that you can connect it not only to one SAP solution like IBP, but also to multiple ones. So it's important to think about this as a generic end-to-end assistant. Joule sits on the SAP Business Technology Platform, which is SAP's principal platform, and where we also have our AI Foundation and AI Core tools, which is where we create the connection to our third-party software like LLMs provided by Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and so on. So this is the overall view. And before I go into IBP, again, what is Joule? Well, Joule is, it's a chat UI that enables you to talk, in a sense, to your SAP applications. And as I said, it doesn't sit on one specific solution, but can be connected to multiple solutions and allows you basically to just ask questions in natural language and get your answers depending on what you have, in which system you have, and which kind of question you're asking. If we talk about IBP, Joule is available in IBP overall, so it doesn't depend on which kind of module you already have for IBP, which kind of license. It doesn't matter. Whichever part of IBP you're using or you're planning to use, you can use Joule on top of it. An important thing to notice, though, is that Joule at the moment is only available in the SAP IBP web interface, so in the Fiori Launchpad. It's not available in the Excel add-in. We are aware that many of our end users use the Excel add-in as the main planning UI. And of course, we are working to make sure that it's going to be available in the future also there. But for now, it's only available in the Fiori Launchpad. Let's take a deeper look at what is available and what we are planning to deliver with Joule. In Joule, in general, there are different interaction patterns, as we call them. And these interaction patterns are, of course, also not specific to IBP, but you can find them similarly also in other SAP solutions. The first one, informational, is about searching for certain information, so searching for documents. The second one, navigational, is about, as the name says, navigating to certain apps. While the third one, transactional, is the one that actually covers the most functionality, and it's the one that really allows Joule to talk to the system, to the solution, and check, in your own data, what is happening. For the informational pattern, this is the one that's already available in IBP, already since last year. And this allows you to ask any questions to the system and get a summarized answer through the LLM, and also the links to the SAP help from which the answer was created. Now, only the SAP help documentation is used when creating these answers at the moment. But you can also enhance the existing documentation with your own documents. Let's have a look first at how this looks in the system when you have the help documentation available. We are here in the IBP system. You can see I'm in a specific app that's called Manage Product Lifecycle, but I could be anywhere in the IBP Launchpad. It wouldn't matter. It could answer my question exactly as well. You can see on the top right, there is the Joule diamond. And if I click on it, then Joule opens up, as you can see here. And then I can start asking questions. In this case, I'm making an example based on the demand planning. So how can I introduce a new product? Joule answers with a summarized answer and gives me also the source documents, which are, as you can see, taken from the SAP help. So here I can then dive deeper into what the help is telling me. And if I might encounter some terms that are very SAP specific and not necessarily known. So I could also use Joule to ask questions and to create an example to understand better what a certain term means. So in this case, I ask what is a launch dimension, and sorry, there is a. I ask what is a launch dimension, and as you can see, it gives me an example. Now, this example is not based on the help that SAP provides, but is just generated by the large language model that Joule uses in the backend. Now, there are other things I could ask. For example, what can I do with a certain app? And it would give me, a list of things I can do. So, for example, for new planners who are not super familiar with the system, this could be a very useful training tool, to understand what they can do with the system. As usual, they can always click on the links and have a deeper dive on the help documentation itself. So this is what it looks like with the basic out-of-the-box documentation. But as I mentioned, you can also decide to enhance this with your own documentation. So this is done through document grounding. This works this way. You create basically a SharePoint, or maybe you already have one. You upload all your documents to the SharePoint, and then you have to create a connection between the SharePoint and the Joule system so that Joule can, let's say, read through the documents. The documents are checked once a day, so they're always kept up to date. And once you have done this, when a user asks a question, and here the example is taken from the human resources from SuccessFactors, but in general would work the same also for IBP. Whenever you ask a question, Joule would first search through your own documents, giving them priority as they will be more important than the SAP help. And then if it doesn't find the answer in your documents, then it would search through the help. The answer, I just see the question in the chat. So the Joule will always answer the question from the user, whether or not they have an S user. But of course, if they click on the link, they can only open the help documentation if they also have an S user, which allows them to access the documentation. So document grounding, it can be very powerful. You know, you could upload training documents. You could upload process documents that describe your process, you know, that you created during your implementation of the tool. You could have, you know, compliance-related documents. It could be whatever in principle, whatever you think is needed for your work with IBP, you can upload to Joule, and then your users can then directly come through the documents. There are different languages that are going to be supported via Joule. So English is the default language, but French, German, Spanish, and Portuguese are also supported. And here, by the way, what I've been telling you up until now, it's not really IBP specific. The same exact functionality you can expect also in other products that integrate Joule. The same is also true for the navigational pattern. This is not IBP specific, but it's part of the, let's say, Joule basic package. And this, as I mentioned already, just allows you to navigate to certain apps and eventually also across different SAP products. So you can ask a question where you want to, you know, maintain something and you don't know exactly what the app you need for is, and then it will give you the link, and you can navigate to the correct app and do your work there. So again, not really specific to IBP up until now. This is Joule basic functionality. Document grounding is also available for all products and not specific to IBP. So if you want to integrate Joule with not only IBP, but also other SAP products, you can have access to this functionality as well. Now comes the maybe most interesting part, which is the transactional pattern. And as I said, this is where then we go into a little bit more the specifics that has more to do with what you are doing with your product. And, you know, also depending on what the product is, these transactional features are going to look very differently. So of course, as you can see in the description, you know, like creating job position is a transactional feature for success factors. For IBP, of course, transactional features are going to have to deal with the planning tasks that you always do. So what are the things that we are planning in transactional features? I'm going to talk about it in a second. At the moment, we still don't have any transactional capabilities. They are all on the roadmap. I forgot to say navigational capability is coming in May. And conversational search, I already mentioned, is already there. So transactional is on the roadmap for later in this year. And I'm going to give you a look on the roadmap at the end of the session. First, I wanted to go a little bit through the technicalities of Joule and how to set it up. So again, this is something that's been mentioned in past sessions, and it's not specific to IBP. This is very high level how Joule works. Joule is, in a sense, sitting on BTP, on the Business Technology Platform. And whenever a user asks a question in Joule, Joule uses the so-called Joule functions, which is kind of a skill catalog, which the applications provide to Joule. So IBP will provide a list of these skills. S4 will provide a list of these skills, and so on and so forth. So Joule will have available the whole list of all the Joule functions. And whenever a user asks a question, Joule looks at the list of functions and then uses the large language model that's called through the generative AI hub to understand what the user is asking, call the corresponding Joule function, and then create the answer also again using the large language model to send back to the user. As you can see, Joule is basically in very simple words, it's a UI with a list of skills, and then he uses the LLM in the backend to understand what to do. Now, this LLM in the generative AI hub can be different LLMs. We have a multimodal approach at SAP. Some of these are hosted by SAP and some of these are hosted by third parties. So this is overall the Joule architecture. If we look a little bit closer to what does this mean for IBP specifically, you can think about these a little bit as a side-by-side approach. So if you have IBP on one side and BTP on the other side, in IBP is where your planning data resides, and Joule sits on BTP, as I already mentioned. So when you open Joule with this diamond icon, as I showed in the demo, you are just calling the Joule web client. So if you ask a question in this chat, now this question is sent to BTP. Functions which are defined by us, right? By the product, by IBP defines certain functions. And then Joule uses RAG, so retrieval augmented generation, to decide which scenario, which function to pick with the help of the LLM, which could be, as I said, from a third party. And once it has picked the scenario, and let's say, for example, that a planner wants to understand the calculation of a key figure, and it asks to get details on a certain key figure, then of course Joule understands first that this is what the user wants to do. If we from product side prepared a function that does this, by the way, which is not there at the moment. And once it has understood what the user wants, then it calls the IBP backend, so the IBP application, which will then get the relevant data in the HANA master database. In this case would be key figure data, but it could also be master data, and then gives the data back to the LLM, which then uses the data to generate an answer, and then this will be sent back to the Joule web client, and that's where the user sees the answer. So as you can see, the way Joule communicates with IBP is through APIs in a sense. So it's not, embedded in the application in this sense. This also means, of course, that you can connect Joule with multiple applications. So you could do the same kind of approach, not only with IBP, but also with S4, SuccessFactors, and so on and so forth. How do you set up Joule? And this is where the fun part starts. So Joule is not going to appear out of the box in your IBP system. There's not going to be a release where we just give you automatically access to Joule, because it requires a separate license. This is it's free of charge, but you need to sign certain terms and conditions that SAP provides to you. So this is something you have to do together with your account executive, for example. And so this is the first step. There is an important thing to notice also when you sign this agreement, at least for now, you also are required to pick the BTP global account you want to create your Joule instance on. And this is an important step, and I'm going to explain why in a second. Once you have signed the terms and conditions, you will receive the entitlement for Joule in the BTP global account. Then you will have to do a few technical steps like configuring the trust to the identity identity authentication tenant or configure the user attributes. And then you can run the so-called booster for Joule. This is a guided procedure. So in BTP, there is, a list of boosters, and you can find the Joule booster there as well. And it will guide you step by step on how to connect your IBP system. And once you've then gone through the procedure, the booster will set up the so-called communication scenario between Joule and IBP. And so you should be able at that point in IBP to see that the communication scenario was created. At this point, then you will need to maintain some content security policy on IBP side to make sure that the Joule web client is visible. And then at this point, you will see Joule in SAP IBP. So as you can see, there are quite a few steps you need to take before you're able to see Joule in IBP. It's not going to be there out of the box. If you want to know the prerequisites and the technical details, here is a little bit of an overview of the licenses you need and identity authentication stuff you need to have. There is also a list of the data centers that are supported by Joule so that you can know if it's available in your region. And of course, I think the language here is a little bit old and there are more coming. But in general, please look at the official documentation on Joule side to see the requirements that you need to set it up. Again, this is not, most of this stuff is not IBP specific, but it's also needed to get Joule in IBP. For IBP specifically, we have an SAP note which collects all the stuff you need to integrate Joule with IBP. So there is an integration guide and a security guide, which are very detailed. So I urge you to go there and have a look to make sure that you understand all the steps you need to take to integrate. What I mentioned before around the BTP global account and the need to pick the right one. The point is that there is the SAP Cloud Identity Services, which allow the users to use a single sign-on between the different solutions of SAP and also their BTP account, needs to be the same for the solution that you are trying to connect to Joule and for Joule. So in this case, it's easy if you have just one BTP global account and one Cloud Identity Service, then you can just connect, it's only one, so there is no difficulty in picking anything. But it could happen that you have multiple BTP accounts or multiple Cloud Identity Services, and then you have to make sure that you create the Joule sub-account in the same Cloud Identity Service as you have IBP. Otherwise, your user will not be able to access Joule through IBP. So make sure that the Cloud Identity Service is the right one. There is also on these blogs that were published by our RIG AI colleagues. And I'm sure also this was also touched upon in the past sessions that were given in the past few weeks. So please check the recordings of those webinars to make sure that you are aware of all these details. Should you have problems after reading through all the blogs and all the integration guides and everything, still something can happen. Of course, you can always open an incident in the right components to get support. If it's something on the Joule side, meaning also on BTP, you're running the booster and the booster is getting stuck or whatever, then you can open the incident on the Joule component. If instead it's something related to IBP, so you went for all the setup, but for some reason then in IBP it doesn't work, or it doesn't work as expected, then you can open an incident on the IBP side. So that's it for the, let's say, boring part. Let's now talk about the roadmap and what we are planning to deliver in Joule. So as I mentioned, transactional pattern is the one that's going to be the most interesting for IBP, because it's going to be the pattern where you can actually interact with the system and with your data. And of course, as I mentioned before, also Joule can only do what its skill catalog allows. So you will be only able to do in IBP with Joule the things that we are enabling from a development point of view. And what are these things? It's not everything, because we cannot implement everything at once. So we have to start somewhere. And so our focus for this year is analysis of planning results and what-if scenario planning. This is where we are starting. Specifically, we are starting with the time series supply optimization explainability, and then we are going to expand to other type of planning algorithms like demand forecasting, inventory optimization, and so on and so forth. But our goal in general is to be able to give you insights on the planning runs, for you to be able to generate scenarios for Joule and to compare different scenarios and different planning runs. These are the things we are looking at for next year to make available in Joule. So this is our focus. And here is a little bit of a demo to give you an idea of how this is going to look like. So here I'm in the planner workspace, so in the web UI of IDP. And I can see there is some unfulfilled customer demand. So then I can go and open the Joule and ask questions around what I know was an optimization run. So I can ask what was the status of the run. And here I get some, technical answer around the fact that it was solved optimally, and there were some warning messages. Then I can ask to get more details on the warning messages. And here you can see there were some technical points, but nothing that seems to justify the unfulfilled demand. So then I could go on and ask, for example, what were the planning KPIs. And here you can see, for example, that the total demand fulfillment rate is 75%, which is a little bit low. So I can ask also to explain why was this demand fulfillment low. And Joule could answer, for example, that there is insufficient supply, or there is limited resource capacity at a specific plant. So then, as a user, now I can, of course, I want to solve the problem. I want to satisfy the demand of the requested demand from the customer. So I ask for mitigation options. And Joule answers with, increasing the resource capacity of a certain amount for the first periods. So here, as a user, I'm going to the planner workspace, looking at the capacity situation for the plant that was mentioned, analyzing, as I would usually do in my planning UI, what are the data, and then I can ask Joule to create a scenario to simulate an increase of capacity in the selected plant. And then Joule could, of course, create the scenario, and I can also ask Joule to run a certain application job on the scenario. Of course, here, Joule would check which kind of authorizations does the user have. Is the user authorized to run jobs? Which jobs is the user authorized to run? So, of course, these kind of checks are always happening. As they are happening for all other features, they will also happen for Joule. So in this example, Joule would answer with the available job templates, and then the user could ask to run one of them, and Joule would start the job in the background. Now, of course, this would take a second. Once the job is done, then I could switch, the user could switch to the scenario version, and you can see already that the capacity situation has changed compared to before. And so now I might want to know how much did the scenario change compared to the baseline. So I can ask to compare the two scenarios. And here you can see that Joule would answer, okay, one of the demand fulfillment of the scenario is now 89% almost, so which is more of the 75% we had before. So you can see there was a comparison happening, and then the user could ask to promote the scenario to the baseline, and it will be done. So be analyzing the unfulfilled demand issue, searching for answer on how to mitigate, creating the scenario, running the jobs, and comparing the different scenarios all through Joule without having to leave the planning UI. So that is our goal. It's not available yet, but the first functionality is going to be available by the end of the year. What is important here is also when we talk about explainability and when you see, you know, this explanation regarding the limited resource capacity, what we are doing here at the moment, it's nothing, it's not necessarily something new. So this information is already something you could have in the system. If you run the supply optimizer, and if you run specifically the supply optimization explanation run, then there is a log that is generated through this run, which already gives insight on what certain problems could be due, what is the reason behind certain problems. The point is usually these explanation logs are not shown to the planner. These are usually things that you know, an IT expert might be looking into, but usually the planners don't look into application job logs. So our goal here is to make the information we know we have in the system available to the planners through Joule. So, you know, to simplify their work, their everyday work. So this is one of the things we are looking at, you know, for like the long strategic term time. And then the other area we are looking into is a little bit more on the operational side in the event of supply chain disruptions. So here in this example, there is some kind of flooding in a certain area. And so we see an alert that a certain supplier might have an issue. And so you could go to IBP and find out, you know, what is exactly the impact of this alert. In this case, there is some revenue risk if the supplier does not deliver what was planned. And again, or here one could ask Joule to look at mitigation option. And what Joule could do is it could look, for example, for alternative suppliers. Now, of course, this information might not necessarily be directly in IBP, but we said also Joule is able to communicate with other products. So it could, for example, check in the business networks which kind of other suppliers provide similar products, similar materials to the supplier that cannot deliver anymore. And then Joule could surface this information, and the user could then kind of go through the different options and could ask Joule to create scenarios in IBP based on the different suppliers and on the different costs. So that the planner can judge which supplier is then the best choice. In this example, you can see multiple scenarios were generated, and the user asked to evaluate them based on risk versus costs. And the answer is you should use make sense supplier, also based on the sustainability rating. So then the planner, if the planner is happy with the suggestion, could create then a purchase requisition. Also here, normally this does not happen necessarily only in IBP, but it's something that happens in communication with the ERP system and the business networks, for example. But in principle, the user should have the possibility to create create orders within the system and change the plan, the operational plan within the system through Joule. So this is a little bit of a vision demo. So it's something that's going to take a little bit longer to be there, but this is also something that we are looking into. Just to give you an idea of what else we are working on, these things are planned for this year, but they are not Joule use cases. They are generative AI, but not Joule. So we are planning some planning assistance in the SAP IBP add-in for Microsoft Excel to give you the possibility to do certain tasks that we know are quite difficult to do by simply describing them in natural language. So the first thing that we are delivering is the possibility to create local formulas by describing them with natural language. And then we are working on conditional formatting as well. Then we are working, as I mentioned, this explainability is our focus, and not only for Joule, but overall for IBP. We see this as strategically important to be able to explain results. So we are investing in some explainability for forecasting and for inventory results. And both of these explainability use cases are going to be available both in the Excel planning UI or in the Planner Workspace UI through a so-called side panel, where, you know, with just one click, depending on which product combination you're looking at, you can have an explanation of why a certain forecast was created or why a certain safety stock was suggested. So these are just, you know, other things on the roadmap, which are not Joule, but I think it's always interesting to know. So with that, that's what I wanted to tell you. So to recap, Joule at the moment in IBP has the conversational search available, and you can use document grounding. Navigational capabilities are coming in May, and transactional capabilities are coming later in the year. Our focus is on explainability and what if scenario planning with Joule, and we are going to expand on those two more and more with each release, of course. And then, of course, we are going to work to add also more use cases next year. So that's a little bit the summary. I see a question around agentic capabilities. Well, here we are, of course, so agentic capabilities are new in Joule. And so we still have, of course, to wait for the technology to be ready for productization. As you can see, I mean, generative AI has been talked about for the past 2 years, and we are just starting to release the use cases. So we really want to be careful here in terms of testing this properly with our customers, making sure that we don't have any hallucinations and that the technology is trustworthy, because of course you don't want to end up in the situation in which generative AI or AI agents take some decision for you, which is not the best for your company. So there's still work to do here. We are definitely already looking into AI agents right now. We are already working on some POCs to enhance also the use cases I already mentioned. But productively speaking, we are not going to have any agents probably before next year. So it's still going to take a while. In the meantime, we are working on, you know, making sure that everything works as expected.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. I know, you know, there's some questions if you want to pull up the Q&A chat box. I tried to answer type as many of the general questions as possible. You can also review those, but for the audience, I'm going to prompt a poll right now. We'll still, you know, we're still have plenty of time for questions with the session, but just to answer some of them, yeah. Yes, this recording and presentation will be available shortly. I will send that link again. It's the same webcast link. Let me share that. Yep, I just typed it in the chat again. But yes, please take some time to complete the poll. And then Laura, I guess there's a quick question. I don't know if you've answered it already, maybe earlier. If so, Chris asks, will this information provided by Joule on the optimizer results provide a level of transparency over and above the OptiLog results?
Well, as I said, the optimization logs is where we are starting from, to provide the information that's in the logs to the users. It's the first step because they just don't get this information most of the time. But of course, we want to go beyond that and also look at, things like exactly the input and output data, what might have changed since the last planning run, and what this change might be due to. So we are working to expand on that and go beyond just the logs. The logs are definitely the first step we are looking into, though.
Awesome. Great insights. Another quick question. Do we have any logistics-based customized AI use case envisioned while IBP is already coupled and integrated with BN4L for TM, freight, and track trace?
So, I mean, as I said, in principle, Joule is going to be able to work with multiple solutions. So if you have multiple solutions like business network for logistics or transport management, and all of them have Joule, and you have connected Joule to these solutions, then of course you can use Joule to be the connecting agent in a sense, and do things that go beyond just IDP, and also use the other solutions as well. Of course, our goal is to make Joule available to work across products. That's the power of Joule, right? That it doesn't stay only within one product, but it's able to go above the one product and really do cross-product use cases. From a product perspective, I can tell you we are working now to enable as many skills, as many functions in Joule as we can, IBP-specific functions, so that we can build on those for the end-to-end use cases. So I would say the end-to-end use cases are definitely part of the vision, but not yet part of the roadmap.
Awesome. Great. Thank you again, Laura, for your wonderful insights on SAP Joule IBP. It looks like the Q&A, we answered most of them. You folks, last call, maybe another a minute or so to ask it, but
and I don't know if they are, can we allow the raiser hand to talk?
Let me see. I think this was auto, auto just muted people. Oh, actually, let me see if I can. Okay.
So if you have your hand raised, maybe you can try to unmute yourself, see if that works.
Hi, Laura. Hi, Laura. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Chris.
Okay, great. Yep. So I can see the vision is obviously really powerful in terms of performing really quick simulations to basically say, what if this? Can you perform a simulation? Does that simulation get created in exactly the same way that you would do if you created one manually? And can you then use that to analyze the results later on?
Yes, in principle, yes. So the tools, Joule is in a sense just a new way to interact with the system. So the tools are the same that you would have otherwise. And of course, we are working to create more tools that Joule can use. But for scenario planning, yes, in principle, it would create the scenario exactly the same way you would do it manually. The powerful thing here is, of course, in principle, you could also be able to just create multiple scenarios at once, to try a range of things. But yes, the functionality is the same that IBP already offers. It's just the interaction with the system that changes.
Fabulous. Thank you.
And then Attila, if you want to try to go off mute, you can speak and ask your question. Okay, it looks like you lowered your hand down. So if you don't have a question, it's totally fine. You can also type it in the Q&A. Looks like Vikas has another question. So when we have external documents integration coming with Joule, Or I guess it's when will we have?
I mean, if you by external documents, it depends on what you mean by external documents. So as I said, document grounding in principle allows you to bring in Joule whatever documents you want. So it can be, I mean, I would expect most of them is internal documents, but nobody stops you from downloading you know, if a supplier sends you some rules that they are following, so it's an external document in that sense, you can also upload this kind of document into your SharePoint and Joule would still be able to go through it. So the document grounding capability is really, in a sense, it's limitless. You can upload whatever documents you want, so including external documents. On SAP side, of course, we are working to integrate more SAP-based documents into the documentation search, but external documents you can already upload right now if you're using document grounding.
So, right. Looks like there are no more questions, at least in the Q&A. Once again, we'll be sharing the recording of this webinar to all the participants on the AI webcast site. Just allow maybe a day or two business days for it to be uploaded. I shared the link in the chat, but you know, if there are no more questions with that, I would like to thank you all on behalf of the SAP Business AI Rig team and our product expert, Laura, for joining today's webinar. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and great rest of your week. Thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.